Hello, my name is Benjamin, better known to you guys as Wheel of Time Rookie, and I wanted to take some time to discuss my thoughts on the midway point of the series so far. I've just recently finished a Crown of Swords, and I have not yet started on the Path of Daggers. So I'm going to take this time to talk about my overall impressions of the series, what I like, what I don't. This will try to be a fair critique. I'm not going to focus solely on what's good, because I think criticizing the stuff you enjoy is important, but due to the fact that I've enjoyed the series so much, I have a lot more good than I do bad, but I will try to present things as evenly as I feel I can. I have never done something like this before, so if I seem awkward in front of the camera or stumble over my words, that will be why. I will do my best to try to focus on the camera and not look around all over the place and speak clearly and not ramble, but if I do that, I'm sorry. I don't have time to go through and edit and retake this a bunch at the moment. I have other things going on in my life, and another thing, I will try to not make any major flaws with what I'm saying, but anyway, I'm going to get into it now. So, one thing I think the book series does really well is development of the main characters. So, of the main characters, the five most important are the ones from Emond's Field, and they're easily the best in my opinion for the most part. There's a couple other characters that get close to where they are, but it's not fully, no one is as fully fleshed out as these five. So the best written character, in my opinion, is Rand. He has a lot of depth and development. The Rand in Eye of the World and the Rand in a Crown of Swords are very different, but you can see how someone who has gone through what Rand has gone through would end up in that spot. From all of the trauma of being forced out of his home, to not being able to protect his home, to having to fight and kill people, to being tortured for weeks in like 9 or 10 days in Lord of Chaos in a way that is horrific. It would make sense that he has a fraying grip on his sanity even without the madness from the taint. You could make a very good argument that even without the taint from the Dark One on the One Power, he would still be going through some mental breaks. He has untreated PTSD for sure, and he is struggling to deal with a weight that is impossible. It is a very heavy burden that has been placed on his shoulders, and it's a strength to Jordan's writing that even though he can do some things that are very unlikable, Rand still comes across as a super sympathetic character, and one that has been really fleshed out well, in my opinion. The next most important character, in terms of, I think, their complexity, is actually Egwene. I think she has a good layering of a drive to, I don't know if better herself would be the right word, but she wants to connect with the One Power and learn everything she can. She's hungry for knowledge, and her time with the Aiel is some of the best in the book so far. Her integration into that culture is really well handled, and I think that she is really stepping up into her own as Amerlin, and I think she could be a very well finished character by the time of the end of the series. Now, Nynaeve would be next, and Nynaeve has a lot of things she needed to unlearn, not just about the One Power, but about her perspective of the world and the people close to her. She clearly cares about them, but she also struggles to realize that they have grown as she has in the series, and they're not the 12-year-old kids she probably thinks of them as in Emond's Field. And Matt, Rand, Perrin, and Egwene all take big strides in this series, and Nynaeve coming to terms with that is really important. And her relationship with Lan is also really well done, outside of the fact that they're kind of falling in love off screen in Eye of the World, but their actual relationship once they're in love, I think, is really well dealt with, considering they don't spend actually a ton of time together, but they're constantly thinking about each other, and it's not their only personality trait either for both of them. I think it's fun for me that 2, maybe 3 of my favorite moments in the whole series are from Nynaeve, with her besting Mogadine, her curing Stilling, and Lan's reunion. All 3 of those are really well done and some of my favorite moments in the whole series. Next, in terms of complex layering, I guess Matt and Perrin are interesting in this case. I personally relate a lot to Perrin. He is very similar to me in a lot of ways. We're both big, we're both strong, we both move cautiously to avoid hurting people. We both like taking a long time to make important decisions. We're not reckless or rushing to do any of that. And we're both not super ambitious in terms of personal power gain, while also really carrying a lot of, I guess, guilt for not being able to help people that we feel we should. And I think that's part of the reason why I like him so much. He doesn't necessarily have quite the same level of development as some of the others, though to be fair, it's partially because he's absent for the better parts of 3 books. He's gone for all of Fires of Heaven, most of Lord of Chaos, is there for the end of Lord of Chaos, but then kind of disappears again in A Crown of Swords, and that's not my favorite, but I'm excited to see where he goes from here. Perrin is also unfortunately dealing with one of the more annoying subplots with Berylane and Fael's fighting over him. I understand why it's happening, but I just don't love it a ton. Matt, on the other hand, as I've said before, he is very, I guess, more potential at this point. There's some really good moments he has. His devotion to keeping his promises is, admirable, and I really like his battle sense, and I hope that comes into play even more moving forward. His scene discussing the tactics with Lan before the battle at Caerhine is really fun. Also, side note, I was watching a Daniel Green video and he pronounced it Carian, and I have read it as Caerhine the whole time, and it's weird how you can read something and have different pronunciations. And on that note, if I pronounced anything wrong, I'm sorry. It's just how my head has sounded it out for the ones that I didn't get from the show. Okay, and then Matt, I'm really looking forward to where he goes from here, and I hope he gets fully fleshed out more so going forward. I have to keep reminding myself that I'm only halfway through. All of the development everyone has gotten could be doubled or tripled by the time we're done, and that's really, really interesting to think of. Okay, so those are the Emmons Field 5, and I really like all of them. I think they all have a lot of potential to grow even more going forward, and I feel like I will really enjoy seeing their full arcs once we get through A Memory of Light. Even though I expect some of them to die there, I don't expect any of them to die before we hit that point. Okay, and then for side characters outside of them, of the Rand love trio of Min, Elaine, and Avienda, I think Avienda is the most fleshed out. Her POVs are fascinating. I really like them. I think she is a great example of how fleshed out Aiel culture is, and while some of the other cultures don't have the same depth, the Aiel feel so realized and well thought out that her relationship with Rand is very interesting, partially because of their cultural differences. I think Avienda is a super loyal friend, and I really respect that from her, and I hope she gets more POVs moving forward, because those are some of my favorite in the series, and if she had had more screen time, I think she would be on par with the Emmons Field 5 for me. Next is Min. I think she gets a lot of good development in Crown of Swords, and I think she desperately needed that, because she really wanted to, be with Rand, but I didn't really get why, because she had barely talked to him that we'd seen, and her and Rand getting more time together, it feels good and makes their relationship feel more real rather than them just kind of being in love for no reason. And then Elaine, I like, but I still think she's relatively flat. She gets some good moments, but nothing super stand out. I'm hoping she gets a little bit more moving forward, and I hope she and Rand get more time together, because they've spent 2 weeks together, and it's been a year and a half since they've seen each other. I don't understand why they're so in love after a month max of dating. That's a little weird. And then after that, the Forsaken as antagonists, some are handled way better than others. I think Ishamael was good for what he was, and I'm excited to see if he comes back, if he's still crazy, if he's gone, partially because the madness that he could have coming back, because he doesn't seem completely there in the first 3 books. It would be interesting to see if that would follow him into a new body and what that would look like for him. Lanfear is also something I think that's done well. She has her own goals and desires, and she's playing more of a mind game than I think any of the other Forsaken do well, which is good. I think she and Moiraine are both coming back, but I feel like Moiraine might be a lot worse for wear when that happens. I feel like Belthamel and Agenor are not great. We've barely gotten them even after their revival at the beginning of Lord of Chaos. And I believe they will be important moving forward, but they haven't felt super meaningful. Mogadine is frustrating because she's supposed to be like the master manipulator, playing things behind the scenes, never being like in the direct line of danger, and yet she's managed to be captured twice, and even when she's freed the second time, she's still under someone else's control, and it's just kind of frustrating. I'm not a huge fan of how she's been handled, and I hope like she gets more scenes to seem terrifying. And then the other Forsaken, Bilal and Ravin, both, you could have kind of cut them from the story. They're not massively important. Semerhage, really scary from the brief time we've seen her, but she's barely been on page. Damondred, he is probably Mazrimtane, and if so, I like that because it gives us a way to know him without, like, having him be him the whole time, even though if he's not, he's also kind of just been absent. And then after that, Samael, I think, is pretty good. He feels relatively strong-willed, and I hope to see him come back. I don't know how that works. Okay, and back on the topic of Samael, I hope he gets to come back and live a full life as a relatively threatening villain. Right now it feels disappointing that he's just gone. And I want the Forsaken to feel more like cohesive threats. And then Graendal, she's fine for what she's done, but she's not done much. I hope she gets more forward time to do things, and I look forward to hopefully seeing the Forsaken be more credible and serious going forward, because I think having 13 of them might have been a mistake, because there's no way to, like, have them each be meaningfully impactful in a way that doesn't feel forced when there's so many, and you don't want to, like, kill important characters. Okay. And then you have Elida, and I'm the only person on her side from what I'm aware of. Like, I'm not fully on her side, but I'm like lukewarm, like, hey, give her a chance. She could come around to the right side, you know? She's got some issues, sure, but, like, I totally believe she could just be completely nice one day. Not nice, but, like, she would fight for Rand at some point in time, you know? I feel like they could really do a good job with giving her an arc that feels earned and well dealt with. But I really don't know if that's going to happen. I feel like she's going to have a very Joffrey-esque turn of events for her, which, you know, not unearned, but little disappointing, I think. I think she's got potential, and I'm probably one of like 3 people that think that, so if you're another person that thinks that, hello, I appreciate you. And then we have Swan and Leanne. I think they're both cool. They're both nice. I feel like their time spent stilled is probably the best for both of them in terms of development and depth, and I am excited to see Swan moving forward because she seems like a great ally for Egwene, helping her navigate the pitfalls of being Amberlin. Leanne, it'll be interesting to see what happens to her. She will hopefully get to be full strength. Like I don't really know where they'd go with her, and it'll be interesting to see what they do with her. Okay. And then we have Gawain, and I like him still. I am frustrated with how he's been handled the past couple books. It doesn't feel super well defined. It doesn't feel super in line with what we know of his character. I'm not saying it's unrealistic, but it doesn't completely work for me, and I hope we get more look into his head moving forward. Okay, and then we have Galad, and I think Galad is really interesting. I think characters that don't lie and choose not to lie aren't forced like the Aes Sedai, but they like choose not to lie. I think that's a really interesting moral bond to have, and I feel like it could be very interesting to see him grow and struggle with alternating perspectives of what's right, which they touched on briefly in, I believe, Fires of Heaven, with the getting Elaine and Nynaeve a ship. But I could see him definitely becoming a interesting character because his moral strength will be tested, and I'm excited to see what happens with him moving forward. And then we have Moiraine. I think Moraine's really good. It's funny, she's shown so much shorter in the book series than in the TV show. Just kind of a funny little thing where she's made out to be super short, and I think her, I guess, reluctance to trust the Emmonsfield Five with responsibility, while maybe justifiable, also was unfortunate. I feel like her and Rand, if they had just been able to be open and honest with each other, could have saved each other a lot of pain. I feel like Moiraine might have known she was going to die after going to Rhuidean, because she repeatedly is hey, Rand, I'm not going to be here long. You need to learn how to be without me. And maybe Rand was okay, she's going back to the White Tower, but Moraine's oh, I'm going to die fighting Lanfear. And I feel like that could be, that's what I got from it, and I feel like she's a very good character. I'm excited to see her more on rereads, and if she does end up coming back, which I would once again be surprised if she didn't, but I would hope she does good with that. I really do like her character. Lan, I enjoy. It's funny because he feels a little out of character in Eye of the World. Not much, but he shows more emotions than he's supposed to in later books, and I think that's funny. And then I think him and Nynaeve, once again, really strong relationship. Enjoy it a lot. Hope to see it develop more in the show. After that, we have, with Lan, his the exploration of the warder bond through Lan after Moiraine dies is heartbreaking, but also interesting. Seeing him struggle so much in this from a guy who's lost everything already. It's really interesting, and I hope to see more of that moving forward. Seeing how Nynaeve kind of pulls him out of that as well. Okay. I think one of the best things Robert Jordan does is, as I touched on briefly earlier, the Aiel. I think their culture feels super well defined. The Aiel are a very complex culture, and they feel so different from anything else in the show besides, or books and show, I guess. Besides maybe the Scene Chan. Once I get more of the Scene Chan, I'll see. Because like the stuff with like the true naming day and changing names, it's definitely interesting to see what more depth we'll get. And I hope with the Scene-chan we'll get a Matt-centric storyline where maybe he's captured by them after the events of A Crown of Swords. But either way, the Aiel. They feel so true to both their circumstances and their like sense of honor, leading to them accepting Rand in a way no other culture would. I also really like a lot of the like minor characters from there. I think Sulin is really fun. I think Amos is good. I think Ruark is like strong, and I like Ruark. I think there's just a lot of good there. I think there's a lot more that could be done with them, but we also have 7 more books. I'm sure we'll get to more Aiel-centric stuff. And I'm glad in the show we got the like Rand and I guess Tigraine, right? Rand and Tigraine's not Rand, Tam and Tigraine. It's like brief meeting in the show, because that was really cool. And like I want more Tam as well. He's been in it a little, but I was a little surprised he didn't go with Perrin in Lord of Chaos. Okay, and then I think Loyal is a great look into Ogier culture. I think Loyal's a really strong candidate for like character I'd most want to be friends with. And I know he's 90, but like the fact that he's young and like a runaway really adds a lot to him. And I think his presentation is really fun, and I wonder what will happen with him moving forward. Okay, and then one thing I do wish we had gotten a little bit more of was Cairhien pre-Civil War and Aiel fighting, because I thought that was actually interesting in The Great Hunt, and I felt like there was a lot more they could have done with it. And while we are getting like some kind of with how they're positioning around Rand, I feel like the relative complexity that was shown in the second book, The Great Hunt, was a lot of unexplored territory that we won't get in the same way moving forward. I feel like a lot of the cultures feeling relatively unique are good, like Tyr, Tar Valon, Caemlyn, Cairhien, Ilian, Ibu Dar. They all feel like unique, and I am a fan of all of those. I think the White Cloaks need a little bit more development. They could have presented a very serious threat, but they just kind of haven't felt that way, especially with Pedron, Nile dying. I felt like that was a bad decision to spend as much time as Jordan had kind of building him up as like a potential player, and then not having him do anything super meaningful before dying, which is upsetting. And I hope they like can be more of a serious threat moving forward. I think there's a lot of really cool world building, like the fact that like Min and Perrin have just powers that aren't related to like the primary magic system, and nobody really knows where they came from or why they're there. Solid. I think the like hints we get at the Age of Legends, very good. I really enjoy the like morsels of it and like how different that world did feel pre-breaking. And then I feel like the magic systems are just really cool. I like how they all have their like unique things going on. And I hope to get more in-depth stuff, especially with Perrin's Wolf Brother stuff. I hope Elias comes back, because he could, like, he should be back. I think he's still just out there, you know? I feel like him meeting up with Perrin would make sense, given Perrin's Taveran nature, and I'm excited to see that. Unfortunately, not all of the series is good. I touched on my problems a little bit with The Forsaken already. I think some of the pacing in a couple of the books, namely Eye of the World and a Crown of Swords. I keep on wanting to say Crossroads of Twilight. They needed a little bit more, I guess, pacing adjustments for me. And I hope that the next books, like, maintain the good pacing that I think, like, The Dragon Reborn and The Shadow Rising did the best with. So I'm looking forward to what comes next. Another of the small issues I have, Eye of the World feels inconsistent with the rest of the series in a number of ways, but I think that's fine. He wasn't completely sure with the world building at that point. Ishamael's, like, the command over death with the Dark One, I hope they go more into that. The inability of it to be, like, clearly defined, I think hurts it, but I'm hopeful moving forward that we will get more in-depth, like, look at how the Dark One controls death, which is interesting to me because of how it relates to reincarnation in the pattern. Does he, like, tear them out of their, like, reincarnation cycle? Because that would be interesting. And then, is there anything else I really wanted to discuss at the moment? I hope we get more Scene-Chan, even though, like, the slavery, disgusting, but, like, they seem interesting, and, like, not everyone in a culture can be pro-slave, so it'll be interesting to see, like, what opposition there could be there. Igainen could be a good starting point with that, especially. I hope we get more of her. She's just been gone for 3 books now with no explanation. So, we'll see. Anyway, if you enjoyed listening to my ramblings, thank you. I'm going to sign off now, and I hope you enjoy this. If not, thanks anyway for staying this long, and I hope the next half of the series is better than the first. If the next 7 books are better than all of these 7, I will be very happy. Alright, thanks. Bye.